Welcome to the Explainer. Okay, let's just dive right into this because today we're taking a really close look at one of the most staggeringly complex phenomena in the known universe. I mean, we're talking about the sheer, unbelievable complexity of vision. We use it every single day, right? Literally, from the moment we wake up to the second we fall asleep, yet we rarely stop to actually think about the incredible biological machinery that makes it all possible.
And that brings us to a really fascinating question, one that has captivated philosophers, biologists, and engineers for centuries now. Is the human eye a literal miracle, or is it something else entirely? When we look closely at our incredibly intricate visual system, the level of precision we find is, well, it's honestly hard to comprehend. To understand why some look at the human eye and see an absolute miracle, we really have to zoom all the way into the molecular level.
To get a sense of this precision, let's look deep inside your eye at this critical vitamin-like molecule called 11-cis-retinol. When this tiny molecule absorbs just a single photon of light, just one, its energy causes the molecule to straighten its bend at exactly the 11th carbon atom. This incredibly precise change in shape kicks off a whole cascade of other factors that amplify the visual signal inside your cell. And get this, research shows that slightly different versions of this molecule, say ones built to bend the 9th or 10th carbon atom, they show basically zero optical activity. It is a staggering level of molecular perfection required just to process a single speck of light.
And the complexity definitely doesn't stop there. Take a look at the Mueller cells inside your retina. These cells are the ultimate biological multitaskers. In literal fractions of a second, they're completely covering the retina to collect the maximum available photons, conducting light around nerve cells directly to sensitive areas, filtering out harmful radiation, and reducing internal light noise that bounces around the eyeball. Oh, and if that wasn't enough, they are simultaneously acting as a support system, supplying nearby neurons with fuel, mopping up waste, and recycling it. This overwhelming, highly optimized complexity is happening inside your eyes right now every single moment you're watching this explainer. But, as incredible as our human visual system is, we are actually drastically outperformed by other species.
Which brings us to Section 1, Eagles, the Acuity Champions. Let's look at the undisputed champions of the sky to see how our human visual acuity really compares. So, normal, good human vision sits at 20/20 acuity, with a peripheral field of about 180 degrees. Not bad, right? But an eagle, because their eyes are deeply angled 30 degrees from the midline of their face, and they have this deeply cone-rich retina structure called a fovea, they achieve a visual acuity of 25 or even 24. Plus, they boast a massive 340-degree field of vision. They absolutely dwarf our human visual capabilities.
So why does all that matter? Well, it translates into the ultimate hunting arsenal. That 24 visual acuity allows an eagle to spot tiny prey from hundreds of feet up in the air. But it gets even crazier. They can actually see colors more vividly than we can, extending all the way into the ultraviolet spectrum. And why is that useful? Because mouse urine reflects ultraviolet light. I kid you not. From hundreds of feet in the air, an eagle can literally track the glowing bodily traces of its prey right on the ground. And while human eyes only change the shape of our inner lens to focus, eagles can rapidly change the shape of both their lens and their cornea. It basically creates an inescapable, high-speed targeting system.
Now for Section 2, Cephalopods and Flawless Design. Okay, so eagles totally beat us in acuity, but surely the fundamental blueprint of the human eye is optimal, right? Well, actually, no. It turns out our vertebrate eyes have a bit of a biological design flaw. During our development, our nerve fibers route before the retina, sitting right between the incoming light and the photoreceptors. They then have to plunge through the retina to reach the brain, which creates a physiological blind spot and literally blocks some light. But then, look at the cephalopod eye, like an octopus. Their eyes develop as invaginations of the head surface, meaning their nerve fibers route behind the retina. The light path is completely uninterrupted. No blocked light, no blind spot. From an optical perspective, they are wired the right way out.
And this brings us to a super fascinating biological concept, convergent evolution. For over 140 years, scientists have compared the cephalopod eye to our vertebrate eye. Both have an iris, a circular lens, eye gel, and a retina. They are both complex, camera-type eyes. Yet our evolutionary lineages are separated by hundreds of millions of years. Nature essentially arrived at a remarkably similar camera-style solution twice, completely independently, just shaped by similar environmental pressures.
But there are some incredible mechanical differences here too.
Unlike us, cephalopods don't change the shape of their lens to focus. Instead, they move the entire lens back and forth, much like the mechanical lens of a camera or a telescope. Furthermore, octopuses have this autonomic reflex that keeps their pupils perfectly horizontal at all times, no matter how their body is oriented. And perhaps most importantly for us, their remarkable ability to regenerate their eyes allows scientists to study them to better understand human eye development and ocular diseases. It's truly amazing.
Moving on to Section 3. Dragonflies, Masters of Time.
Let's step away from the camera-style eye entirely for a second and look at the insect world. We humans have a camera-type eye with a massive 126 million photoreceptors. The dragonfly, on the other hand, has a compound eye made up of nearly 28,000 individual units called ommatidia, totaling around 250,000 photoreceptors. So we easily win on spatial detail. But temporal resolution, meaning how fast the eye processes frames of light, that is a completely different story. Humans operate at about 50 to 60 Hz in bright light. The dragonfly, a staggering 200 to 300 Hz.
Let's visualize what that actually means for perceiving reality. Because we see at 50 to 60 Hz, fast motions blend together smoothly for us. Think of watching a movie, which is usually just 24 frames per second. But a dragonfly is sampling the environment in incredibly fine temporal slices. At 300 Hz, a dragonfly perceives fast-moving prey as clear, discrete trajectories rather than a blur. To a dragonfly, our human movements would likely appear incredibly sluggish, almost as if we're moving through thick syrup in slow motion. Their vision trades high-resolution static detail for an ultra-fast temporal reality. So, from the molecular perfection of our retina to the ultraviolet tracking of the eagle, the flawless wiring of the octopus, and the slow-motion reality of the dragonfly, how did such diverse machinery come to be?
That brings us to our final part, Section 4, Origins, Design versus Evolution. This is really the core philosophical and biological debate. On one hand, you have the framework of intelligent design. As argued by the Institute for Creation Research, this perspective posits that the eye's molecular precision, like the exact flawless placement of atomic bonds in that 11-cis retinal molecule we talked about earlier, simply cannot be the result of chance. This echoes the famous 1802 assertion by philosopher William Paley, who looked at the eye and called it a literal miracle of design, pointing to the deliberate hand of a master biotechnician. But on the other hand, you have the counter-framework of evolutionary biology. And what's really fascinating here is that Charles Darwin himself acknowledged the sheer overwhelming complexity of the eye. In his Origin of Species, he openly admitted that the idea of the eye evolving by natural selection seemed at first glance absurd in the highest possible degree. But, as you can see in the quote, he argued that despite how difficult it is to imagine, the gradual development of the eye was perfectly feasible through natural selection.
And scientists have mapped out what that feasible evolutionary roadmap looks like over geological time. It starts simple. Unicellular organisms like Euglena developed basic light-sensing eyespots just to detect ambient brightness and synchronize their circadian rhythms. Over time, these photosensitive patches invaginated, meaning they folded inward, creating a cup shape that allowed for directional sensing. Eventually, the opening narrowed to create a pinhole camera effect, much like the eye of a modern nautilus. Finally, the addition of a lens allowed for the high-resolution, fully functional camera eyes we see in vertebrates and cephalopods today. Now, you might be wondering, how long does a process like that actually take? Well, researchers ran the numbers on this. Using highly pessimistic estimates, so assuming a very slow mutation rate and only slight generational advantages, they found that a fully functional vertebrate camera eye could evolve from a flat patch of photoreceptor cells in less than 364,000 years. And to put that into perspective in geological terms, 364,000 years is quite literally a blink of an eye. Which leaves us here. We've explored the sheer molecular complexity inside our own eyes. We've seen how our visual acuity is vastly outmatched by the eagle, how our design is outwired by the octopus's forward-facing retina and outpaced by the dragonfly's manipulation of time. So, as you look out through the very visual systems we've been investigating today, I want to leave you with this final provocative question. In all this staggering complexity, do you see the deliberate hand of a master biotechnician, or do you see the ultimate blind triumph of natural selection? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep looking closely at the world around you.